Hey YouTube, welcome back to Tinker Tools. A few months ago we actually tried to provide some clarity to the Dewalt drill lineup, taking all the different models from all the different stores that you can still buy currently today and kind of showing you where they stack up compared to each other. Well, today we're going to attempt to do that same thing for the impact driver lineup, so let's dive into it on Tinker with Tools. Alright, so as I mentioned, Dewalt makes a lot of tools, and in terms of impact drivers, they don't make quite as many as they do of drills, but it's very near or very close. I have 6 examples here on the table. There are a few that I don't own, but we're going to go ahead and talk about those anyway and kind of where they stack up. Now before we get started, there are a few things that pretty much all Dewalt impact drivers, especially the more modern ones, share in common, and I want to get those out of the way first. First off, Dewalt impact drivers have some of the best grips on the market. The handle, the way it fits in your hand, it is a really nice ergonomic grip, and that is something that really shines on each one of these impact drivers in my opinion. Each one that I have on the table today has at least 3 LEDs around the collet, which provides pretty good viewing. Now it's not as good as the newer halo lights, for example, but overall this is some pretty good lighting out of impact drivers, certainly better than the single LED placed either down on the base or right below the collet. Alright, so let's jump right into it. We are going to be starting with 12-volt impact drivers. One of the few that I do not have here on the table today is going to be the older brush model of the impact driver. That's going to be the DCF 815. It is a older brushed impact driver. And back when Dewalt offered just their brushed 12-volt tools, they just didn't compete very much in the 12-volt market. Now, I do know that I've seen several people claim that they've still got theirs running 10 years later. In no way am I saying they're not well built, but performance-wise, they're just not going to compare to the more modern options. For that reason, unless you just absolutely love brushed tools, I would not recommend that you go out and buy that in today's market. Now the next one is going to be the DCF 801. Several years back now, Dewalt actually revamped their entire 12-volt lineup. They went with the 12-volt Extreme brushless lineup, and this is the impact driver that we got. Overall, this is a vastly improved impact driver and a solid 12-volt option. Is it going to be the fastest or the strongest 12-volt impact driver out there? No, but it's certainly able to get a lot of jobs done. It's able to do it really well. So overall, it's just a really solid impact driver. Very nice tool. Easy to recommend this if you're in the 12-volt option. Alright, so that settles it for all the 12-volt ones that we have. Now, moving up to their 20-volt platform, there's going to be 2 different tools that I actually don't have. The first is going to be the older DCF 885. Now, this is a brushed impact driver. When this came out, this was actually a very nice premium impact driver, but at this point, it's just gotten a little bit older. I think if you have one of these and you're still using it, you probably still like it. It's not necessarily a bad impact driver. It's just not going to be as performance focused in modern times as what it was when it first came out. Now the other one that I actually don't have here, I have actually owned for about an hour. That is the DCF 787. I bought this impact driver thinking I was getting the 887, which we'll talk about here later today. Ended up being disappointed when I realized I'd gotten the wrong one and ended up taking it back. That 787 is the entry-level brushless model. It offers 1,500 inch-pounds of torque. It's by no means a bad impact driver. It's just that they've released newer versions of kind of that same level of tool, and you're just going to be getting more performance. I see this one still on sale, still on shelves at my local Lowe's, and it hardly goes on the same types of sales as what you see the newer options go on. And so for that reason, I can't really recommend you go out and get this impact driver today, because you simply can just get a better impact driver, usually for a cheaper price, and you're going to be getting something more modern. So now, what is that new version of that kind of entry-level brushless impact driver? Well, that is going to be the DCF 840. It was released shortly after they came out with a brand new atomic impact driver, the world's shortest impact driver. And so this one flew under the radar until people on YouTube started testing it and seeing that this impact driver actually might have been the better, stronger, faster impact driver out of those 2. This one is very unassuming. It has no speed selector. It has no XR badging on it. It is very small and slender, I will say, up in the head portion of the tool, but this one actually has won several different performance comparisons that I've done with other Dewalt impact drivers, and it is a very strong impact driver. This one is just a really great sleeper impact driver, in my opinion, for getting some great performance, usually at a really great price. One thing that Dewalt really has going for it, in my opinion, we'll say it here, is the small power stack battery. Even though Flex has stacked lithium, we know Milwaukee's talked about coming out with their forged batteries. The small power stack battery gives their tools a battery that can perform alongside of a 5 amp hour battery in the size of something smaller than a 1.5 amp hour. And so because of that, you're not going to have impressive runtime necessarily on this battery, but for tasks of shorter duration, this is actually going to be a great pairing with just about any one of these impact drivers, in my opinion. All right, so now we're going to be moving over from kind of what they sell at Lowe's here locally. This is going to be the Atomic Impact Driver model DCF809. When Dewalt released the Atomic lineup, the tools were supposed to be more compact, and when this came out, it may have felt like a small impact driver, but today this is not even really the smallest impact driver in Dewalt's lineup. It's actually closer in size to the DCF887, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It is smaller than that impact driver, but just barely so. Now this impact driver gets a similar torque rating to the DCF840. It's going to get 1700 inch-pounds, but in terms of the impacts per minute and the RPMs, this one is actually going to be less than that 840. So when I start talking about how these two impact drivers compare, if the pricing on these is the same, I don't see any reason to go with this unless you've just had some sort of bad experience with the 840. The 840's done everything I've asked it to do, even things that are much bigger than what you would commonly associate with an entry-level brushless impact driver. But this impact driver is fine. It's just when there's a better, faster, stronger option and the same price point in the same family, it's really hard to go ahead and recommend this impact driver because there's just nothing it offers that this one doesn't do better. This impact driver is going to be the DCF850. Now, here in the United States, this is an Atomic tool. You can obviously get this at other online retailers, but in stores, this is sold at Home Depot versus at Lowe's. Now, the DCF850, when it came out, one thing that they could claim was that it was the smallest, most compact impact driver in the world. And that's something that they still hold today. It is the shortest front-to-back impact driver. And with that, it does kind of have a very different shape than, say, the 840, for example. The 840 is going to be very long and slender. This one is just kind of short and stubby and fat, but it is noticeably shorter than the 840. Now this one, when it came out, the specs they announced on it, they were identical in specs to the XR impact driver at the time, the 887. It also gains the speed selector that you're getting on the XR impact driver, something that the 840 and the 809 don't have. So you are getting some additional functionality. It is a smaller impact driver, and in testing, it compares very favorably, in my opinion, to that of the 887, just in a much more compact package. When it compares to the 840, I find that especially on fasteners where speed is going to be the focus more than just brunt torque, it does get outperformed by the 840. In my opinion, this impact driver has enough performance that you're not going to just get blown away, but it is not the fastest impact driver in their lineup. Now, outside the United States, this does carry in some territories the XR badging. This one kind of blurs the lines a little bit. I think it performs more like an XR, but because of the size and the compact nature of it, they wanted to call it an Atomic series here. When paired with even that small power stack battery, you're going to find that the battery is actually just a little bit longer than the actual size of the head of the tool. And so it is the most compact. Overall, I really like that one. I think it's one of the top choices from them. All right, so now we're going to be moving up into the XR tier of tools, where all over the world these have the XR badging. This is going to be the outgoing DCF 887. This is the XR impact driver that we had for the better part of, gosh, 7 or 8 years as the top option in the Dewalt lineup. It is a little bit bigger by today's standards than what most impact drivers are, but it is still a very serviceable impact driver. Like I said, it offers the exact same specs as the DCF 850, the Atomic. Overall, this one has done everything that I've asked it to. It just feels like it's an older tool at this point. Now, when we've done performance testing in the past, and obviously we'll have been showing you testing all along this video, this one typically fares least favorably out of the 840, the 850, and the 845 that we haven't talked about. It kind of is the trailing one in the pack, but it's, like I said, pretty comparable to the 850 overall. The 850 is just doing it in a smaller package. This isn't a bad impact driver to have. It's just that, in my opinion, there are better options, typically at even better prices in the current lineup. And so for that reason, it's not one that you need to go out and necessarily replace if this is your impact driver, but it's just not going to be the top option in the current Dewalt lineup, in my opinion. All right, now when we got the DCF 840, one of the things that a lot of people online would start to say is that is what's going to be the XR impact driver. They're just going to add a speed selector to it. When you started hearing those rumors, and we started hearing rumors of a new impact driver, and then we got the DCF 845, that is certainly what this impact driver felt like. It did have a 3-speed selector. It looked more like the DCF 840. In fact, if you put them side to side, they are almost identical in every way. This one does, like I said, have that XR badging. And in terms of performance, it does have some similarities more with the 840, in my opinion. So you do have, overall, on paper, the best performance of any of the Dewalt impact drivers in this one. Torque being equal, but you are getting higher RPMs and higher impacts per minute with this tool, and you're getting that 3-speed selector. It feels like this one is just slam dunk. This is the best impact driver and the one that you should get. And coincidentally, right now at the time of making this video, this one is actually on sale for $99 through various online retailers. And so it does seem like this is a great option for you. And overall, I'm going to say that it probably is the best impact driver in the Dewalt lineup currently. The more I've used it, it seems like the performance is breaking in a little bit. It was getting beat initially by the 840, but I do think that those two are pretty even, and they're probably the two best performing impact drivers. It is a nice impact driver. The problem I have with this one when it came out is just that we already have roughly 3 impact drivers that have this same relative level of performance. And so this one just didn't feel like a giant step forward for anything that Dewalt had been doing. All right, so when you start to look at the Dewalt impact driver lineup on the whole, I think it is less confusing overall than the drill lineup. But where the drills had very clear top tier performers, with the impact driver lineup, you basically have, in my opinion, 3 different tiers. You have your 12 volt tools, you then have your entry level 20 volt tools that are going to be in one kind of performance category, and then you have this top tier. Now the thing about the top tier, in my opinion, is that there are several impact drivers that kind of fit into that top tier. You would expect that the 887 and the 845 would be in that top tier carrying the XR badging. Well, then you've got the Atomic here, which in some places does carry that XR badging that performs more like this tool than it does like this other Atomic impact driver. And then you have the curious case of the 840, the least assuming of all of these in terms of how it's going to perform, but yet in performance testing that I did in this video here, you can actually see that this 840 actually won the performance testing that we did that day. But when you can get this one for $99, why would you go out and buy this one for $149 or this one for $149, which is where it usually sits? It just doesn't make sense to go for some of these options, even though this one should be superior to this one based on how their badging goes. So when it comes to Dewalt's impact driver lineup, I think that is where some of the confusion exists, is you can get a really nice impact driver almost all the way through their lineup. It just depends on if you pick the right model. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it's helped to clear up where some of the different models stack up and where you might be able to find good value for the performance level that you need. If you have any questions about any of these impact drivers, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If you like this type of video and you want to see more of these for different brands, go ahead and hit that like button. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all the support. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.